Okay, so let's do soup. Um, let's start out with a little bit of prep work first. We've got some poblanos from the garden, some heirloom tomatoes, one of my bulbs of garlic. I know that's not going to be enough. And some red onion. I had to purchase the red onion. We don't do too well with bulbing onions here. Our temperatures fluctuate quite a bit, and I think that has a lot to do with it. I've got some more heirlooms I brought in from the garden. I'm going to be weighing those up, and then I'll start blanching those so I can peel them for the soup. Got my water started, and here I have this is an authentic kamad. It's used in Latin countries for tortillas and browning and so forth. I just find that it works really well for blistering my peppers when I'm cooking. So I'm going to go ahead, turn that heat up a little bit more, get it really good and hot so that we get a nice sizzle when we drop those peppers on there. And while I'm waiting for everything to heat up, I'm going to go weigh some tomatoes. Okay, so I've got my kamad good and hot. I've got some nice Purple Beauty sweet peppers from the garden that we're going to throw into this, give it a southwestern flair. And the poblanos, yum. The water should be coming to a boil shortly for blanching the tomatoes. Not quite there yet, so I'm going to go ahead and start working on blistering these peppers, which won't take long at all. Just leave them a few minutes on each side, and then once they're done, we'll remove them, let them cool a little bit, and scrape off any of the outer skin on those. You may have noticed we're getting a little bit of sunspots on some of the tomatoes, some of the peppers, but that's still good. You can still use the peppers. They're perfectly fine. Cut away any bad spots that make you uncomfortable or you don't want to eat, but they're fine. These are coming along nicely, getting nice and blackened. You can also do this in the oven, by the way, which I do when I'm making spaghetti sauce or something that requires a lot of roasted vegetables. So we'll address that in a future video. Pretty easy. A lot less time consuming on the tomatoes than blanching and peeling. The roasting of tomatoes just lets them slip right off. Easy peasy. No ice baths, no nothing. Oh, and by the way, I've got my ice bath ready here. Heavy on the ice, because when you throw those hot tomatoes in there, they will melt that ice, and then you won't get the shock effect that you're looking for. Okay, let's get some tomatoes going. The poblanos are looking quite good. Nice and black, charred. Check that out. So I'm going to take those off and set them aside. My water is boiling good and hard. So we're going to go ahead and blanch a batch of tomatoes. Don't put too many tomatoes in your boiling water. If you do, you'll regret it, because what's going to happen is it's going to reduce your boiling water temperature greatly. You're going to have to wait for it to return to a boil, and in the interim, what it's going to do is it's going to cook your tomatoes. That we don't want. You will see in a lot of tutorials for blanching tomatoes to make a little slit at the bottom of the tomato and to core it. I never do this, and the reason why, especially in making soup, I want all the flavor. I don't want to lose any juices, and if you've done it in that fashion before, you know what I'm talking about. So much of your juices are going to get lost in those tomatoes. Okay, we're going. So once your water returns to a boil, you want to set your timer for 30 seconds. 30 seconds might be long enough. It might be a minute. It depends on the heat of the water, how many tomatoes you got going on in there. But basically, is you want to watch for that very first tomato to split. Once that happens, after your 30 seconds or thereabouts, have your ice bath ready, something easy to scoop the tomatoes out with, and then we're going to want to get them into that water as quickly as possible. Let's see how this is looking. You probably can't see that, can you? That's a hard rolling boil. Aren't those beautiful? And yes, I did not set my timer. My phone is my timer, which is what I use for filming the video. But I'm going to go ahead, give this a shot. Some beautiful tomatoes. Okay, so I'm going to carry on with that. I'm going to get those purple beauties on the commode as well. So just let these do what they do. Let them do the shock. Leave them in there for 5-10 minutes, and then you can just slip the skins right off. So I've got some black turtle beans, some organic black turtle beans that I soaked overnight. And you know, you never really can tell with beans what you're going to get until you've actually soaked them and or cooked them. So I have a lot in the pot, little too much to be adding more ingredients to the pot. However, I'm going to take some of this out, put it into the insert for my Instapot, put them in the Instapot, and that'll be dinner tonight. So let's get going on that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get some of this liquid out, or excuse me, leave some of the liquid in. Not worry too much about what's going into the Instapot in terms of liquid. We can adjust that when I make the beans for dinner tonight. And I just want to get this down to a manageable level. Cooking soup is really, it's not rocket science. The powers that be would have you believe that canning is a scary thing. You can't do this, you can't do that. And it's really not as scary as it sounds, especially with soups. There are basic guidelines for canning soups, and you can put pretty much anything in a jar and can it and call it soup by using those guidelines. It's very limited what you cannot do. Starches are not a good idea because they can mold in the jar. I don't do it, but I have seen it done, and I have seen what the results are after they sit down in your pantry for a little bit. So that I do not recommend, nor heavy pasty items. If you've ever canned pumpkin before, you know what I'm talking about. USDA guidelines recommend that you not can pumpkin puree, but rather in cubes with water. And the basic rule of thumb is, in soups especially, 50% water, 50% solids. And I found that to be a really good ratio for most if I want to have some broth, especially with beans. These beans soaked overnight, and I'm going to bring them up to a boil in the pan, but I guarantee you, once they go through the pressure canner, these guys are still going to grow in size. So that 1-to-1 ratio is really good. Okay, so I've just turned my pot of beans on. I want to bring them to a boil, just to a boil. And then I'm going to turn the water off and start adding my ingredients. So right now, while I am waiting for that to come to a boil, I'm going to start prepping my ingredients. And you can see I didn't do the little slit at the bottom of the tomato. And the skin is really just peeling right off. We're not losing any meat there. So that's my policy. I don't want to waste any of the goodness to leaching into the boil water. The tomato skins, I keep 2 separate bowls here when I do this. The stem, I leave on until I use the tomatoes. I don't know how true it is. They say that if you leave that on, that your tomatoes will ripen faster. So that's what I do because I want to use my tomatoes. And then the skins, I set aside and pop them in the freezer and freeze dry them. And then when I have a nice amount of freeze-dried skins, I just powder those up and use them in soups throughout the year. They lend a really nice flavor. Tomato base is my favorite soup base, by the way. So we've got a fair amount of tomatoes here, but I did set my pot of boiled water aside and reserved it in the event I decide that I want a little bit more tomato to my soup. This one busted up a little bit, but I am peeling it over my freeze-dry bowl so that I don't lose any of that. And I'll probably just go ahead and pop this one right into the beans so that I don't further lose any of it. And the cores, that's another thing I don't worry too awful much about. They tend to cook down and you don't even notice them, unless it's like a really big Mamba Jamba. This isn't even one of our bigger tomatoes, but this one I may cut away that core. We'll see when I get to it. All right, so my beans are just about to a boil. I've got some of the tomatoes in there already. Some of them were quite juicy. Now these, where I feel like the core on top is probably not going to break down the way that I want, I just go ahead and cut the top straight off. I don't waste my time digging that thing out of there. Chickens love that. And then depending on the size of the tomato, I just half it or quarter it, just loose cuts. It's going to break down in the cooking process, so you'll be fine with that. Big time saver. And I don't know about you, but I can't handle a tremendous amount of tomato acid on my hands. The varieties we grow are low acid varieties by and large, but nonetheless, I still prefer to get through the process as quickly as possible. So I've got my tomatoes in. Water is just about there. Let's take a look at that. It's going to be good. And again, as soon as that comes to a boil, I'm just going to turn it off and cover it as I prepare the remaining ingredients to go into the soup. I never worry about getting 100% of this skin off. I'm more concerned about flavor as opposed to the skin. Skin's going to cook down. So just loosely remove what you can. And you can just de-seed these or not de-seed these. It's entirely up to you. With the poblanos are not a very hot pepper to begin with. But if you are not a big fan of any spice in your soup, then I would recommend removing those seeds. You can remove the seeds from the sweet peppers. I don't really concern over it either way, but I do remove some. That's going to give some nice flavor to the soup. Especially these purple beauties, they turn back to a green color when I roasted them. This is my first experience with them. I had no idea they were going to do that. And I don't know a whole lot about the nutrient content of these, but I do know as a generality that purple vegetables are said to be higher in antioxidants than their counterparts. So not only are they pretty, they're a little bit healthier as well. So I've got my jars in the oven, in a 250 oven for 20 minutes to get them nice and warm. Reason being is the beans are very hot. And the general rule of thumb with filling jars for canning purposes is hot with hot and cold with cold. If you put cold ingredients ingredients into a jar, you want to put it into cold water to begin your processing time. Likewise, if you have hot ingredients, you want to put them into a hot jar, and also put that hot jar into at least warm water in the pot. I have exploded jars before, and it's not a pleasant experience. You have to throw out all of your water, start all over again, clean everything up really well. Glass shards are not fun. Okay, so I have chopped up all of my peppers, my garlic, my red onion, and I'm going to take them over and add them to the pot, and then we'll get some seasonings in it. So I am not measuring anything. I'll give it a little taste after I get all my ingredients in, but with all the goodness that's going in here, I'm fairly positive it's going to come out fantastic. Sometimes we'll have a soup that comes out not exactly what I was going for, but no, we don't waste that. When I open up the jar, if I decide, okay, it probably didn't have enough onion to it, I just add some onion to what we're heating up for dinner that night, or garlic, or maybe a little bit more vegetable broth. Whatever it is that feels like it's missing, then I go ahead and add that in. And I do this a lot. I have, however, written quite a few recipes, some of which were on the old YouTube channel, Lost and Gone Forever, but that particular incident led me to start writing these down. I'm not writing it down today. I know somewhere I have a spicy black bean soup recipe written down, and I've been working on putting them in print and listing them on our stand store. So if you see anything you like, I think they're $2.50. They're downloadable PDFs with complete recipes. I am working on that now, getting them up there. Help support the channel. So if you see something you like, do shoot on over to the stand store, and let's see if I can put that link in the description. I think I can do that. I can tell already I will need to add a little bit more water to this, just because the beans are thickening up a little bit more, and I don't feel like I'm going to get that 50-50 ratio. So I'm going to run and grab some water from the filter, and we'll move forward. Okay, that ought to do it. I do not salt these recipes, by the way. I salt each jar so that I get a nice balanced amount of salt for preserving purposes. And yes, salt is a preservative. I've heard people say it is not. It is. It's been used for, I don't know, eons to preserve meat. So I stick to that. This, by the way, this is a vegetarian bouillon that I add to my soups. It's Edward & Sons. It's vegan and it's gluten-free. I use gluten-free in anything I'm going to be consuming. Frank has pretty much a rock gut. He can eat anything, but gluten doesn't really work real well with me. Anyways, a little bit of the vegetarian beef bouillon on there, or you could add your regular beef bouillon if you prefer. This is oregano from the garden. We have tons of it, so I use it generously. I don't know about you, but oregano grows like crazy in our garden. It's dried, but it'll rehydrate in this broth. Can't have Latin-inspired food without good oregano and black pepper. We're big black pepper fans here. So a lot goes into most of my recipes. Some smoked paprika. You can use chili powder if you'd like. We've got the poblanos in there. So I'm going to make this a little bit on the milder side. If somebody wants it a little bit spicier, we have lots of spicy stuff here. Just a little bit, give it a nice smoky, peppery taste. That smells amazing. And finally, the cumin. Coriander would probably be a nice addition as well. Oh yeah, that smells great. Give it a little stir, and you should be good to go. Yeah, let's get loading the jars. All right, I think we're all good to go. I almost always forget some tool that I need right here, but let's see how this goes. I've got nice hot jars to put the hot soup into. These guys are a lifesaver. This is just for canning. That way you don't spill all over the threads of your jar, which is important. You want to be able to get a good seal, and if you have anything in those threads, your jar will not seal. Like I said earlier, I do like to put my salt directly in the jar. The general rule of thumb for quarts is 1 teaspoon. I've got a ½ teaspoon here, so I'm going to do this a couple of times. Type of salt is important. You don't want any kind of ingredients in there, specifically anti-caking agents, which is in a lot of salts, and they don't list it on the ingredients. So it's best to stick with like pink salt, kosher salt, or they actually make canning salt, which is for that purpose. I don't know if you can hear that rumbling. Fighter jets practice over our house several times a day. Okay. So the 50-50 does not have to be exact, just kind of eyeball it. You want some liquid in there. And also, since we have chunks of tomatoes, those tomatoes are going to break down during the canning process, and they're going to lend a little bit of liquid to your concoction as well. Looks pretty good, huh? Now, the corn has already been harvested for the season. In times past, if I time it just right, that I have tomatoes, peppers, onions, and I'm making a spicy bean soup, I do like to put some corn in it. Corn's come and gone though. So with soups, your headspace should be 1 inch. And why headspace is important is because your food expands during the canning process, and too much and it's going to leak out the top. You can have explosions. I've not had an explosion that way before, but I have had things that siphon, which is really common. They siphon, they come out through the top, spill all over your jar, and your jar doesn't seal. And after all your work, that's the last thing that you want. This is debubbling, especially if you have a lot of different kinds of chunks, or a lot of chunks in general in here. It's really important because you'll have little air pockets in between all the food particles, and you're not going to have proper headspace. And when you have your finished project, you could have jars that end up being down by a quarter, a third even. So you really want to do that. Wiping the rim to make sure, the rim and the threads, by the way, to make sure that you have no particles remaining. For this purpose, I'm just doing a dry tea towel. You can use a tea towel or cheesecloth. I tend to stay away from things that have fuzzies like terry cloth, just because I don't want to leave that behind. And if I am doing something that has a sugary content, then I like to have a pot of hot water next to me. That way I'll wipe the rim with hot water. And then we just want to put the lid on. This is key. You do not want your jar to buckle. So we don't over tighten the jar. We want to do what they call finger tight, just till it's snug and your wrist does not turn. And that's ready to go. So I'm going to continue filling the jars, and then I'll get back with you in a few minutes. So I've got my jars all filled up, ready to go. Using my electric canner today. It's really important to note that with so many different manufacturers coming up with new and improved ways to pressure can, they all have their own instructions for use. So I urge you, if you're going to do pressure canning, make sure that you follow your manufacturer's instructions on that. This one, this was my first try at an electric pressure canner. I have an old-fashioned one, and there's pros and cons to each. I can put so much more food in the old-fashioned one. However, I have to sit and babysit it. Whereas the electric pressure canner, I can set it and pretty much just walk away and let it do its thing. I've got about enough water on it. This particular model requires 8 cups of water for it to function properly. And again, like I said, check your manufacturer because it's really important that you have the right water level for your canner. When I remember, add just a little touch of white vinegar to my water. That will prevent you from having cloudy jars as the end product. When you pull the jars out of the canner and you haven't done the vinegar in the water, you'll have very, very cloudy, dirty looking jars. And it doesn't hurt anything, it just doesn't look pleasant. And I like a nice clean jar when I'm done. So this guy only takes 4 jars. I've got a topper that goes on the top here. I should be using it. I do not know what I've done with it, but if you have one of those, do that. It keeps your jars level. So I'm going to close this guy up. Now, all pressure canners, regardless of the model and how the functionality works, you have a valve, and that valve remains open until it starts spewing steam. And then once it starts spewing that steam, you wait 10 minutes. This is a loose instruction on this, but you wait 10 minutes after it does that, and then you close that valve, and that's when you begin your counting time. Right now I have mine to the open time, or to the open setting, and I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to set my time. I have the timer on this, and it requires setting on high in order to do it. This is an ear-piercing sound. But for quarts, which is what we're doing today, quarts of soup, the recommended time for pressure canning is 75 minutes. You do not start that counting until it has done the pressure up and pressure regulating that I talked about. So I'm going to go ahead and set it for 75 minutes. Ooh, ear piercing. I'll see you on the other side.